Fallout 4 is a pretty big game. Whether it's your first time in the wasteland or you're back for more after Fallout 3, there's plenty to see and explore and discover through the various different locations across the world. Apparently size does matter if all the pre-release speculation is to be believed, after a video was released showing it taking only about 11 minutes to get all the way across the map. In fact, it's slightly larger than Fallout 3 and roughly the same sort of size as Skyrim. Of course, this doesn't take into account any of the underground areas, tunnel areas, inside areas, and frankly there's just tons of that in Fallout 4. So many different locations have multiple floors, multiple entrances, and often lots of different hazards for you to get your head around at the same time. One of the big things talked about in this iteration is the crafting system, which allows you to break things down to steel, wood, cloth, and then build up defenses, buildings, doorways, whatever you want pretty much. It all has a nice distressed aesthetic which fits in with the rest of the world. Nothing looks too clean and new when you've created it. But at the same time, it would be nice to see a few specific things like, floor and wall panels, for example, so that you can plug those giant gaps, which are obviously there because of the massive explosions and all. The power armor's back, and in some encounters it's pretty much essential, but it's not always clear when that might be. Which leads us to the biggest lesson of Fallout 4, saving. You have to save over and over and over, because you will die a lot. Whether it's just exploding randomly after staggering onto a mine or being chased down by some mutant hounds, there's plenty of things there out to kill you in the wasteland. Occasionally you'll run across legendary enemies, and often these are marked with a skull to suggest that they're a little bit too difficult to fight right now. But you can still whittle them down anyway with a bit of tactics. It just takes a lot of tries. A lot, yeah. Yeah. A lot of tries. The attention to detail is just really impressive. You see things lying around underground which really tell a story of their own, like this boxing ring we came across. It's things like this which really bring the world to life, really flesh it out and make it feel like a fully realised world. Despite the fact that it's literally a nuclear wasteland, you can still feel a little bit of comfort in crafting your way back to a sense of humanity through your different settlements. Sanctuary is one of the first which you come across, but there's plenty of others where you can just gather together and create a little community for yourself. It's here you see the links to the mobile game Fallout Shelter, where you were challenged with creating an entire vault full of dwellers, and it's quite reassuring to see that the mechanics do kind of carry across in a way, although it's much harder in Fallout 4. One thing Bethesda games are renowned for are glitches, and this game's no different. Occasionally you'll find enemies absorbed by walls, or the camera getting stuck behind things, or getting slightly confused. But none of it is horrifically game-breaking, none of it really ruins the experience. It's all just an occasional blip which just makes you stop for a moment, but really doesn't affect how well you play the game. Developing a character in a world like this is always challenging. What skills should you go for? What things do you need? What things do you not need? Thankfully, Bethesda's simplified the skill system by introducing perks rather than skill points. So you have to study the perks for a while to work out what you're working towards, but really everything falls under one of the special criteria. When you set at the beginning, it's useful to focus on just a few attributes, so you can really get an idea of what your character's like, rather than trying to be an all-rounder and it taking ages to get to any particular skills. The Pip-Boy is back with a vengeance, not least in its special collector's edition, and everything you need is pretty much on your wrist. Navigating your way through menus can be a little bit difficult when you're trying to keep an eye on lots of different things, but the inventory is at least split down into a few categories, and managing items is fairly well organised for a controller. You'll come across a few different companions on your quest, and you can customise them just as much as you can your own character, to make them a bit of a snappy dresser like we have with Piper. Though you can give them more practical gear as well. The important thing to remember about Fallout 4 is really it is an experience rather than a game. It might sound pretentious to describe it like that, but that's what we come to expect from Bethesda. Skyrim, released back in 2011, has seen hundreds and hundreds of hours played by players all across the world. And that's because of the stories that they create for themselves more than the campaign. That said, Fallout 4's campaign is a lot more compelling compared to Fallout 3, and really draws you into the narrative through straightforward missions which are easy to get your head around, and also the story itself is fairly straightforward. There's a few undertones here and there which you can pick up by reading more into things and reading more documents, but for the most part you can just carry on and enjoy yourself and not really worry too much about the details. The bottom line is, we've only really scratched the surface of Fallout 4, and it sounds like a cliche, but in this case the map is so dense and the experience is so vast, it's difficult to see the end of it. Even charging your way through the campaign itself is a really enjoyable experience, but you'll quickly find yourself distracted by side quests and missions just as you're traversing the world. There's so many different buildings close together, you can't help but check them out. So take your time and enjoy Fallout 4, but try not to get too obsessed with hoarding.